What's up, y'all? Welcome back to another one right here. We got this new SCP video, SCP-060, Infernal Occult Skeleton. I told you we come with the SCPs, we come with the bangers, we come with the back, we come with everything, bruh. Pause. But you know we coming. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so stop playing, stop acting like we're not doing this for real. But let's go ahead and get straight into it. No intro, bruh. Legit play the video, brother. Go.
Who doesn't love a walk through a dark forest? The sight of branches set against the low moonlight looking like all manner of dark and—
You wanna know why I don't like that? Like a dark, long, you know what I'm saying, little forest walk is because if I'm with a lady, if something happened because I'm a man, she expect me to, you know what I'm saying, be Superman or Batman. I'm gonna get my ass whooped just like you and get eaten too. All right? Nigga, what?
and twisted claws reaching out of the night to grab at you. Every step brings with it the snap of a broken twig that practically echoes around you. Whenever a breeze rustles the leaves on the trees, you feel like something might just be following you, moving through the forest towards you. It is easy to get lost in a forest at night, after all. That's why the children's song warns us that if you go down to the woods today, you'd better not go alone.
True.
The image of a forest in the darkness has inspired fear for generations. From fireside folktales telling of wolves and monsters lurking among the trees, to modern horror games about a tall, faceless man in a suit stalking you through the woods. And then, of course, there's SCP-060, otherwise known as the Infernal Occult Skeleton. Now, despite the name, SCP-060 is, in actual fact, a forest. Or at least, it's a forest to begin with. A picturesque grove of 17 tall white oak trees, spread out across 8 acres of land in rural northeast Minnesota. It almost looks like something out of a tourist brochure. A beautiful stretch of forest sitting under—
Bro, we just watching a SCP about a brochure, bro. What's up with y'all niggas in these brochures, bro? Stop reading brochures and go on the interwebs. Instagram, bro. Come on now.
Clear skies. Well, during the daytime, anyway. If you ever find yourself hiking through a corner of Minnesotan forest that isn't in any of the guidebooks, then tread carefully. You might just stumble upon the demolished ruins of a house that used to stand among the trees, out in seclusion. And a word of advice to you if you happen across this place: do not, under any circumstances, stop walking for a smoke break. Of course, thanks to the good folks at the SCP Foundation, you're unlikely to ever just wander your way into SCP-060. More likely, they'll administer you with amnestics, the Foundation's patented memory-altering drugs, and send you on your merry way, totally oblivious to the huge hard-to-miss greenhouses containing SCP-060. Beyond those glass walls, you might have caught glimpses of Foundation personnel watering the trees, carefully tending to each SCP-060 specimen. Maybe you saw them gathering up leaves and pruning each tree individually.
That's a lot of work.
Composting every part of dead plant matter instead of leaving the white oaks to grow freely. And perhaps you even noticed that not one member of personnel was carrying a lighter on their person,
Nobody
nor
noticing that.
a taser,
Nobody
or
noticing
so much
that.
as a small box
And nobody
of matches.
is noticing that.
Nothing that can start a fire. Or rather, you would remember seeing all that if the amnestics hadn't already made you forget. But what's so special about these trees? Why would the SCP Foundation go to the extent of housing a collection of white oaks in greenhouses and meticulously oversee their growth? What is it about these particular specimens that make personnel so cautious about fire safety? And why on earth is SCP-060 a collection of trees, referred to by the nickname the Infernal Occult Skeleton? Well, the answer to all those questions becomes pretty apparent the moment any of the SCP-060 oak trees catch fire, and something comes hurtling out of the forest. That something is known as SCP-060-Alpha. Standing at just over 2 meters tall, the entity takes the form of an adult human skeleton. Much more than just a spooky, scary collection of bones, SCP-060-Alpha is fully animate, capable of moving of its own accord, without the aid of muscles or a nervous system. Oh, and it also happens to be on fire. Move aside, Ghost Rider. SCP-060-Alpha is engulfed from skull to toe bones in bright white flames, burning at a temperature of approximately 1500 degrees Celsius.
Damn,
or
Celsius?
almost 3000 degrees Fahrenheit. For reference, that's just shy of the melting point of iron, and hot enough to grant a human being a quick but agonizingly painful death. Granted, after a few seconds of that heat, your nerve endings would be scalded, so maybe you wouldn't feel that much pain. But 1500 Celsius is enough to burn the moisture right out of your skin, melt your eyeballs, and generally fry you to a crisp in a matter of minutes, if not seconds. Good thing SCP-060 Alpha isn't known for being highly aggressive and hostile. Oh, wait, it is? Not good. Upon manifestation, the burning skeleton will attempt to do as much damage as possible,
What?
and usually
Nah,
to
that's wicked.
whoever is closest. It
That's
can appear
wicked.
at any time, and after as little as 20 grams worth of one of the SCP-060 trees is burned. As if being actively hostile and burning hot enough to reshape metal wasn't bad enough, SCP-060 Alpha has also shown itself to be fiercely intelligent. The entity seems to retain knowledge whenever it manifests, and has gained a growing familiarity with the layout of the Foundation site that contains the SCP-060 Oaks. The Infernal Occult skeleton's methods of attack tend to include throwing its entire body at flammable materials. However, it will avoid causing any
what the
damage
hell?
to specimens of SCP-060. The skeletal entity can run at speeds up to 50 miles per hour. Now that's almost the same speed as a gazelle. Just picturing anything traveling towards you at that speed is horrifying, let alone something headed straight for you at gazelle levels of speed while also on fire.
Are gazelles really that fast?
It is this combination of speed and heat that means SCP-060 Alpha poses such
I
a
ain't gonna cap, bro. If I see a burning man running to me, bro, I'm gonna stop, drop, and roll. Nigga, I don't know.
threat to anyone close whenever it appears. If left unchecked, the entity could easily cause colossal and widespread forest fires and property damage. Interestingly, any areas that SCP-060 Alpha does burn with its flames will start to yield saplings of the SCP-060 Oaks around 6 weeks after the fire has stopped. The Foundation doesn't allow these saplings to grow to full size, and instead pulls them from the ground and disposes of them, composting the saplings to feed the other SCP-060 specimens. Luckily, the biggest strength of SCP-060 Alpha, its flames, also happens to be its greatest weakness. It is possible to fight the fires of the Infernal Occult skeleton by dousing it with water, or any other materials capable of dousing flames, whether it's sand or
Hydrant.
foam from a fire extinguisher. Of course,
Or
this is a lot
extinguisher, yeah.
hotter and harder to put out than any ordinary smaller-scale fire, but despite being a difficult task, it is not impossible. About 500 liters of water should do the trick if you've got a big enough bucket nearby. After that, SCP-060 Alpha will be weakened, gradually collapsing and turning into dust. However, if another part of an SCP-060 tree is burned and the entity reappears, it is believed that this will be the same Infernal Occult skeleton, rather than a new version of the bone-burning being. So we have a grove of oak trees that manifest a flaming skeleton if they are ever burned. Maybe that's not the weirdest thing
wicked.
you'd see in a Minnesotan forest. But wait, there's something else. Cast your
There's
mind
still
back
more?
a few minutes and you'll remember that we mentioned some ruins. The remains of a demolished house that used to stand secluded among the SCP-060 white oak trees. Knowing that the Infernal Occult skeleton can appear from the oaks might make it obvious what happened to this house, but there's still a story to be told here. The house's owner was a man by the name of Jonathan Corhill. Now, Jonathan was something of an odd man, considered a bit of an eccentric to some. He preferred to spend his time in solitude, alone with his own thoughts for company, rather than mingling among the rest of the world. Even his own family noticed that Mr. Corhill was drifting away from them, becoming a more bitter, nihilistic person in his old age, and choosing isolation over human connection. Now, sure, loneliness doesn't hold much appeal to everyone, but sometimes there are people who just prefer being alone. That might be what drew Jonathan Corhill to his secluded little house in the forests of Minnesota, somewhere no one would bother him. For the most part, the rest of the Corhill family adjusted to their eccentric relative's behavior. Jonathan would have rarely accepted visitors to his house in the forest, but he still kept in contact with those who he'd been close with. Most notably, he'd regularly share phone calls with his brother, one Christopher Corhill. That is, until something seemed to change unexpectedly in the year 1996. On one of their calls, Jonathan outright told Christopher to never contact him again,
What?
severing any ties with any remaining family members and friends in the outside world. Jonathan cut everyone off, living within his own bubble where he could immerse himself in his unusual interests. According to Christopher, his brother had seemed otherwise normal up until a certain phone conversation, but Jonathan had become obsessed with the occult. Specifically, he had embroiled himself in the history of the Victorian era and certain supernatural practices that had been undertaken in that time period. Now, whether Christopher honored his brother's wish to sever ties is unknown. A mail carrier would visit Jonathan's home in the woods not long after their phone call. Maybe among the envelopes, this courier was delivering what could have been a letter from Christopher or other members of the Corhill family, begging their estranged relative to come back to the world. You see, even people who claim to prefer being on their own sometimes need human interaction. Talking to people and being in the presence of friends and family are hugely important.
We're social creatures, bro. We're designed to live in groups. That's how we always survive.
Factors in maintaining a positive state of mental health. But what happens when someone rejects that entirely and instead becomes lost in their obsessive study of the occult? Well, the mail carrier was the first to find out. Arriving at Jonathan Corhill's woodland house, the courier found the place looking almost skeletal, a shell of the building that had once stood in the forest.
Dipping, bro. Don't even
According
approach
to the locals, the carrier had been sent to deliver a notice to Mr. Corhill, explaining that his house was being foreclosed. But it seems someone, or something, had beaten them to it. A fire had spread from the house's fireplace, quickly engulfing the entire structure, presumably with Jonathan still inside. It wasn't until later that very same year that Jonathan Corhill was officially reported as a missing person case with the local authorities. Any search that was undertaken in an attempt to find him uncovered next to no evidence of his whereabouts. To this day, nobody knows for certain if Jonathan Corhill is dead or alive. His whereabouts are unknown. On the surface, it might be easy to make the assumption that the Infernal Occult skeleton reduced the reclusive old man to nothing more than a cinder. It definitely seems plausible that Jonathan, collecting firewood to keep himself warm in his isolation, accidentally chopped down part of an SCP-060 oak, put it in his fireplace, and called forth the vengeful flaming bones. But perhaps we shouldn't be so certain. After all, Corhill's house wasn't entirely burned down, despite the entity normally trying to cause as much damage as possible
burn down
whenever
iron,
it appears.
It would definitely burn down the whole wood.
No human remains were found in the house, and the skeleton of SCP-060 Alpha had to have come from somewhere, right? SCP-060 offers a few warnings, and not just about the dangers of traveling through the forest alone. The appearance of the flaming skeleton whenever the SCP-060 white oaks are burned could serve as a reminder that we need to be vigilant in protecting the forests of this world. Trees are one of our few sustainable resources, but for every one we cut down or that catches fire, it takes years to regrow a replacement. And perhaps the third and final warning of the Infernal Occult skeleton is simply, don't play with matches, especially around trees. Otherwise, you might get burned. Now go check out The Plane That Never Was. That's
crazy. This was definitely an interesting one. Let me know if you guys want more SCP explained. Well, of course you guys want more SCP explained, but shout out my boys over at the Infographic Show, putting up for the SCPs, making some good content. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I told you we still doing SCPs, still doing a lot of videos. Like I said, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure you like, subscribe, and comment down below, and I'll see you on the next one, bro. Peace.